Mary Mallon infected dozens of people with typhoid fever while working as a cook in early 1900s New York. But she never once showed a symptom herself and refused to believe she was the cause even after health officials proved it beyond doubt. She would spend a combined total of nearly 26 years of her life forcibly quarantined on a small island in the East River, one of the first documented healthy carriers of a deadly disease in medical history. This is not medical folklore. Mary Mallon was a real woman, and her case is still taught in public health courses today because almost everything about how the government handled her was as strange and troubling as the disease itself. Mary Mallon emigrated from Ireland to the United States around 1883 and built a career as a private cook for wealthy New York families, a respected, well-paying position for an immigrant woman at the time. She was a talented cook, in high demand, and moved between households in Manhattan and the surrounding area through the early 1900s. In the summer of 1906, she was working for a wealthy banker's family, renting a summer home in Oyster Bay, Long Island. Within weeks, 6 of the 11 people in the household came down with typhoid fever, a serious, sometimes fatal bacterial infection usually spread through contaminated food or water. The homeowner, worried the outbreak would make the property impossible to rent in future summers, hired a civil engineer named George Soper to investigate. Soper specialized in tracking outbreaks, and something about this one didn't fit the usual pattern. There was no contaminated well, no obvious source. He began working backward through the household staff, and one thing stood out. Mary Mallon had been hired as the cook just 3 weeks before the outbreak began, and she had left her position abruptly soon after it started. Soper began digging into Mallon's employment history and found a pattern that should have been impossible under the medical understanding of the time. Over the previous years, she had worked as a cook for 7 different families. In 8 of those households, outbreaks of typhoid fever had followed her, 22 people infected, 1 confirmed death. At the time, the dominant belief was that only actively sick people could spread disease. Soper's hypothesis was radical, that Mary Mallon herself carried the bacteria without ever showing a single symptom, silently contaminating food with unwashed hands as she cooked, and moving on to a new household each time an outbreak made her current position untenable. When Soper finally confronted her directly and asked for stool and blood samples to test his theory, Mallon reacted with fury. She had never been sick a day in her life, she said, and she saw no reason a healthy woman should have to prove anything. She refused to cooperate, and when Soper returned with a colleague to try again, she chased them out of the house with a kitchen fork. New York City health authorities did not ask a second time. In March 1907, a health inspector arrived with police backup and physically restrained Mallon, who fought them the entire way to obtain the samples by force. The results confirmed Soper's theory. Her body was teeming with live typhoid bacteria, concentrated in her gallbladder, even though she had never once experienced fever, weakness, or any other symptom of the disease she carried. Health officials classified her as a serious public danger and forcibly quarantined her on North Brother Island, a small island in the East River used to isolate people with contagious diseases. She was held there for nearly 3 years without ever being convicted of any crime. The state's justification rested entirely on public health law, not the criminal justice system. Mallon never accepted the diagnosis. She had submitted to a battery of tests that all agreed with each other, and she still believed the entire premise was wrong, that a person who felt completely healthy could not possibly be a walking source of infection. In 1910, a new health commissioner, sympathetic to her situation, released her on the condition that she never work as a cook again. Mallon initially tried to comply, taking lower-paying jobs as a laundress. But cooking paid significantly more than the alternatives available to her, and she resented being punished for a condition she still didn't believe she had. Under a false name, Mary Brown, she quietly went back to working as a cook. In 1915, an outbreak of typhoid fever broke out at Sloan Maternity Hospital in Manhattan, sickening 25 people and killing 2. When investigators traced the outbreak to the hospital's recently hired kitchen cook, Mrs. Brown, they found Mary Mallon behind the alias, cooking under a fake name in a hospital kitchen, spreading the same disease all over again. This time there was no sympathy and no second chance. Health authorities returned her to North Brother Island, and this time the quarantine was permanent. She would live out the rest of her life there, working eventually as a technician in the island's own laboratory, becoming a minor local fixture rather than the household name Typhoid Mary that newspapers of the era had already turned her into. A name she despised, and one she felt reduced her to nothing but a disease. Mary Mallon died on North Brother Island on November 11, 1938, having spent close to 26 years of her life, nearly 3 decades, quarantined there across her 2 confinements. An autopsy confirmed active typhoid bacteria still present in her gallbladder at the time of her death, exactly where doctors had said it was all along. She is believed to have infected at least 51 people directly, with 3 confirmed deaths tied to her, though officials at the time suspected the true number across every household and hospital she ever cooked in was significantly higher. She remains the most famous asymptomatic disease carrier in American history, a case still cited today in medical ethics classes over one uncomfortable question that was never fully resolved. How much can a government justifiably restrict the freedom of someone who feels completely healthy in the name of protecting everyone else? Mary Mallon never accepted the answer that was forced on her. She spent her life certain that a woman who never felt sick could not possibly be the one making everyone else sick. And modern science had already proven beyond any doubt that she was wrong.